The planet Varine was once a place of bright skies and soft winds. Its mountains carried silver light when the twin suns rose and its seas sang through the crystal rocks. It was a home for the Tharkan, a gentle race who built their homes with harmony and balance. For centuries they lived in peace. They never made war, never took more than they needed. They believed that the galaxy was kind, that the strong helped the weak, but the galaxy was not kind. After a failed terraforming project ordered by the Galactic Union, the skies of Varine changed. The winds turned to poison storms. The oceans began to dry, leaving cracked plains of white salt. The crops failed. Machines that once made clean air started to rust. The Tharkan sent distress signals, thousands of them, across the stars, but no answer came. The Galactic Union had already decided that Varine was too far, too costly, and too weak. They marked the Tharkan as a lost colony. A quiet phrase that meant one thing. They were left to die. Vera, the elder of the Tharkan, stood outside the crumbling council hall. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the dust, her eyes tired but still filled with a calm fire. Around her, the last of her people gathered. Thin, hungry, their once bright robes turned to faded cloth. She looked at the empty sky. "Any signal today?" she asked softly. A young Tharkan named Rollo, carrying a broken transmitter, shook his head. "Nothing, Elder, only silence." "Always silence," Vera closed her eyes. "Then the galaxy has truly forgotten us." Rollo looked at her. "Elder, will we die here?" Vera did not answer at once. She looked at the dry horizon where a storm brewed again. "Perhaps. But if we must, we will die together with dignity. No one will say that the Tharkan begged to the stars." She turned and went inside to the great hall, where the faint hum of old technology echoed. The hall had once been full of light, but now only one lamp remained. Its glow flickered as if the planet itself was breathing its last breath. Weeks passed. Storms grew stronger. The Tharkan gathered their children in shelters and rationed the little food they had. They had no more power to send new signals. All they could do was wait. One night, as the storm whine screamed over the cracked ground, Vera sat alone, watching the stars through the half-broken glass of the ceiling. Her heart was heavy. She whispered a prayer in her native tongue, not for rescue, but for peace. Then she saw something strange. A small dot of light moved differently across the sky, steady, bright, and fast. At first she thought it was a falling star, but it grew larger. It had shape, direction, purpose. Her old heart began to beat faster. "It cannot be," she whispered. She called the guards to the observation deck. They saw it too, a ship entering orbit above Varine. A voice came through the broken comms network. It was full of static, but it was not a Tharkan voice. It was strong, deep, human. "This is Commander Lee of the Earth vessel Hopebringer. We received your old distress signal. To anyone still alive down there, hold on. Help is coming." The hall went silent. Then, for the first time in months, someone laughed. A rough, surprised, tearful laugh. It spread from one Tharkan to another, until the whole hall was filled with weak, trembling joy. Vera fell to her knees, hands pressed together. The stars answered. When the Hopebringer entered the lower atmosphere, its hull glowed red from the heat. The ship was not large, just a medium explorer vessel, but to the Tharkan it looked like salvation itself. It cut through the storm clouds like a blade of light. The landing site was the old plaza near the broken city towers. Dozens of Tharkan gathered, holding torn flags and pieces of light crystal to signal the ship. When it touched down, dust and smoke filled the air. The ramp opened with a slow hiss. From it, humans stepped out, wearing armored suits scratched by travel and storms. Their helmets lifted, showing tired but determined faces. Their eyes scanned the crowd, not with fear or disgust, but with care. Vera walked forward, trembling slightly. She bowed her head. "I am Vera, elder of the Tharkan. You came?" Commander Lee, a man with a calm gaze and a voice steady as stone, nodded once. "We heard your call, Elder Vera. Earth received it through an old relay. You've been waiting a long time." Vera's eyes filled with tears. No one else came. Lee looked around at the ruined buildings, the starved faces, the silent children. "Then I guess it's our turn." He turned to his crew. "Set up the medical tents. Water filters first. Power cells after that. Move." At once, humans began unloading supplies on boxes of food, water systems, small generators. Some ran to check injured Tharkan. Others began repairing broken machines. the air filled with the hum of energy, hope, and voices working together. Later that evening, as the twin suns sank, Vera sat near a campfire built by the humans. She watched them share their rations with her people. The children smiled again for the first time in years. She turned to Commander Lee, who was looking at a map on his wrist device. "Commander," she said softly, "why did you come here? You could have ignored us like the others." Lee looked up, then at the stars above. His face was calm, but his voice carried quiet strength. "Because no one deserves to die alone. When we got your signal, we voted. Every human on this crew agreed. Here we come. Simple as that." Vera's eyes shone in the firelight. "The galaxy called us weak, said we were not worth saving." Lee smiled faintly. "Then the galaxy needs to learn what being strong really means." He stood, adjusting his jacket. "We're not leaving until your people can stand again. Humanity doesn't walk away." That night, for the first time in years, the Tharkin did not hide from the storm. They stood together near the fires, watching as the Hope-Bringer's lights shone through the rain. The sound of human engines, the laughter of children, and the soft hum of repaired machines filled the air. In the middle of it all, Rollo approached Commander Lee. He held a small charm made of metal and blue crystal, the symbol of the Tharkin. "Commander," Rollo said shyly, "this is for you. It means 'with you always' in our language." Lee took it gently, his gloved hand closing around it. "Then that's what we'll be. With you, always." Above them, the stars of the Galactic Union still glittered cold and distant. But on this forgotten world, something new had begun. A bond not made by treaties or politics, but by courage and kindness. The Tharkin, once left to die, now had an ally. And the galaxy would soon learn what it meant when humanity stood beside someone. Morning came slowly to the broken world of Vereen. The air still carried the taste of dust, and the skies were gray with the memory of old storms. Yet for the first time in many years, there was movement in the city again, the sound of engines, tools, and human voices working together. The Hopebringer stood tall in the middle of the old plaza like a guardian made of steel and light. Around it, both humans and Tharkin moved together, building shelters, repairing pipes, and clearing the ruined streets. The ground that once felt like a graveyard now hummed with new life. Commander Lee walked through the camp with calm steps. His uniform was stained with dirt and his eyes looked tired, but there was quiet pride in his heart. Every direction he looked, he saw hope, fragile but real. A group of human engineers worked beside young Tharkin workers, fixing a broken water purifier. The Tharkin were amazed at how humans worked. They didn't give orders like the Galactic Union did. They shared ideas, taught, and helped with their own hands. When the machine finally started to hum again, a wave of cheers rose from both groups. Clean water began to flow into the tanks. For the first time in years, the Tharkin could drink without fear. Commander Lee smiled. "Good work, everyone. That's the first step." A small Tharkin child ran forward and dipped her hands in the water, laughing as the cool drops hit her face. Her laughter was like music after silence. Even the tired soldiers smiled when they heard it. Elder Vera came to stand beside Lee. She looked at the humans with eyes full of emotion. "You do so much." "Without asking for anything," she said softly. "Why? You owe us nothing." Lee looked at her for a moment. "You said your people believed in balance, that the strong should help the weak?" Vera nodded slowly. He pointed at the busy crowd. "We believe the same. Maybe that's why we found each other." The elder looked at him in silence. Then she smiled faintly. "Perhaps the stars guided you here." Later that day, a strong wind rose again, carrying red dust across the valley. The sky darkened and thunder rolled over the plains. The humans rushed to protect their equipment while the Tharkin helped carry supplies into the shelters. Inside the largest shelter, lit by human lamps, Commander Lee called a meeting. His officers, along with Elder Vera and a few young Tharkin leaders, gathered around a holographic map projected from Lee's wrist device. "The atmosphere here is getting worse," Lee said, his voice steady. "If we don't stabilize the weather control towers soon, the next storm could destroy what we've built." One of his engineers, Mara, pointed at the map. "The nearest tower is 80 kilometers north. The route is unstable and radiation levels are high." Rollo, the young Tharkin technician, stood up. "I can guide you. I used to work on those towers before the storms came." Lee studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. We'll go together. Small team, 4 humans, 2 Tharkin. The rest will stay here and protect the colony. Vera placed her hand over her heart. May the winds carry your courage, Lee gave a small smile. Let's hope they don't. Carry us away instead. The group laughed softly. Small moment of warmth in the cold air. They left at dawn. The team moved through the ruined plains on human transports, rugged vehicles built for rough terrain. The journey was long and harsh. The landscape was full of broken towers, fallen bridges, and sand that glowed faintly under the twin suns. It was the face of a world that had been forgotten too long. Along the way, Rollo told stories about how Vareen once looked. There used to be forests here, he said, pointing at the cracked ground. Blue trees that shone at night. The children used to play under them. One of the humans, Corporal Diaz, looked around and sighed. We'll bring them back someday. Rollo smiled sadly. You really believe that? Diaz nodded. Humans have a saying, where there's life, there's hope. When they reached the weather tower, they found it half buried in sand and dust. The structure leaned dangerously, its surface cracked and full of holes. But the main reactor was still there. Mara and Rollo worked side by side, climbing the steel frame, connecting power lines and cleaning old circuits. Hours passed as the team struggled in the heat. Finally, the tower's light flickered to life. A deep hum filled the air as energy began to flow again. Dust lifted from the ground and the wind slowed. Above them, the dark clouds started to break apart, letting sunlight through. Rollo cheered and raised his arms. It works. It really works. Commander Lee smiled proudly. You did good, all of you. Let's get back before the next storm finds us. But before they could leave, the scanner on Lee's wrist beeped. Unidentified ships entering low orbit, he said, frowning. Not Galactic Union. Not friendly either. Mara looked at him sharply. Raiders? Most likely. Back at the main camp, Elder Vera received the same warning through the human comms. Fear spread quickly among the Tharkan, but the human soldiers stayed calm. We've dealt with worse, said Sergeant Hale, checking his rifle calmly. Let's get ready. Instead of hiding, the humans organized the defense. They built barricades from broken metal and placed portable shields around the camp. The Tharkan, watching their courage, began to help too. They carried crates, fixed old plasma fences, and handed out supplies. Vera watched from the high platform, her eyes wide with both worry and awe. The humans worked together like a living machine, fast, organized, fearless, she whispered. So this is what it means when they say humans never give up. By the time Commander Lee's team returned, the first enemy ships had appeared in the sky, dark shapes with red lights. They hovered like vultures over the wounded planet. Lee looked up at them. They smell weakness, he said quietly. They think Vareen is still alone. Vera stepped forward beside him. But we are not alone anymore. Her words seemed to give everyone strength. The camp grew silent for a moment, waiting for the raiders to make their move. The ships finally fired a warning shot into the ground near the camp. Dust and light burst into the air. A voice came through the comm channel, rough, cold. This world belongs to no one now. Leave your supplies and go, or we take everything by force. Lee pressed the comm button. His answer was calm and clear. This world belongs to the people who live here. And we don't run. The raiders attacked. Fire lit up the horizon as their small crafts landed near the ruins. But what they found was not a helpless colony. It was a wall of determination. Humans and Tharkan fought side by side, using energy shields and old defense turrets that had been repaired hours before. Even the children helped by carrying water and supplies for the wounded. The sky was filled with light, noise, and the sound of courage. At the center of it all, Commander Lee moved from one position to another, giving orders, helping those in need, and refusing to back down. Every time a Tharkan fighter fell, a human was there to pull them to safety. Every time a human was hit, a Tharkan medic ran to help. It was chaos, but it was unity. After long hours, the raiders finally retreated, leaving smoke and silence behind. The defenders stood, tired but victorious. The camp was damaged but still standing. Vera walked toward Lee, her robe torn and her face covered with dust. You fought for us, she said in disbelief. You could have escaped, but you stayed. Lee smiled faintly. We said we were with you. We meant it. Rollo approached and held up the small Tharkan charm around his neck, the same symbol he had given Lee. With you always, he whispered. Lee nodded. With you always. That night the survivors gathered around the fire again. Humans and Tharkan sat together, sharing stories and laughter. The stars above were brighter, as if the universe itself was watching them. The Tharkan had been forgotten by the galaxy, but now they had something greater than pity. They had allies. They had friends. And though the road ahead was still long, everyone in that camp knew one truth. Humanity had come, not as conquerors, but as family. For the first time in years, Vareen slept in peace. The sky over Vareen had changed. Once filled with endless storms, now it held light, weak but growing. After the battle with the raiders, the air seemed calmer. Smoke still rose from the far hills, but there was laughter in the camp. The people of Vareen, both Tharkan and human, were rebuilding, but peace never lasted long in the galaxy. Commander Lee stood on the wall of the rebuilt camp. His eyes scanned the horizon. Machines hummed behind him, human and Tharkan engineers working side by side. The colony was stronger than ever, yet deep in his chest he felt unease. Something was coming. He turned as Elder Vera approached. She moved slowly but with pride. Her silver eyes watched the busy camp. "It feels alive again," she said softly. "We can breathe. We can dream," Lee nodded. "You can, Elder, but dreams attract attention." She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Lee sighed. "The Galactic Union. They will hear what happened here. They don't like when someone changes the order of things." Vera frowned. "But you saved lives. You gave us back our world." "Sometimes," Lee said quietly. "That's exactly what scares them." In the communications tent, Mara and Diaz were checking reports. The long-range scanner flashed red. "Commander," Mara called, "you'll want to see this." Lee entered. On the screen were signals from deep space, coded transmissions in Galactic Union frequency. "Dozens of them. They're talking about us," Mara said. "The Union Command. They're calling the mission unauthorized interference." Diaz crossed his arms. "They left these people to die, and now they're angry because someone didn't." Lee said nothing for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. "Well, we must be doing something right." Still, the worry was real. The Galactic Union was powerful. If they sent ships to stop them, humanity would be in danger, and so would the Tharkan. Days passed. The humans continued to work. They taught the Tharkan how to repair engines, how to build water filters, and how to protect themselves. In return, the Tharkan shared their knowledge of local plants, minerals, and weather. Together, they turned a dying world into a living one again. Children played in the open fields, chasing small flying drones. Tharkan elders sang old songs while human soldiers repaired roofs. For a short while, Vareen looked like home, but high above in orbit a Union patrol ship appeared, silent, cold, and observing. Inside the Hopebringer, the radar operator saw it first. "Commander, we have a visitor." Lee looked up from his desk. "Let me guess, Union colors?" "Yes, sir." "They're hailing us. Patch it through." A holographic screen opened in front of him. The face of a tall alien appeared, in blue skin, golden armor, sharp eyes. It was Admiral Kalran, representative of the Galactic Union. "Commander Lee of Earth," the Admiral began, his voice calm but distant. "You are violating Union Directive 47. Vareen is a restricted world. You were ordered not to interfere." Lee kept his tone steady. "With respect, Admiral, no one gave us that order, and we don't stand by while people die." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Humanity is still a young species. You would be wise to remember your place." "My place," Lee said, leaning forward, "is where I can make a difference." The transmission cut suddenly. The Union ship moved away, but its shadow stayed over the world, silent, watching. That night, the humans and Tharkan gathered around the fire. The mood was mixed, pride and fear. Vira spoke first. "They will return, won't they?" Lee nodded slowly. "Yes, they don't like what we've built here." Rollo clenched his fists. "Then we'll show them. We'll show the whole galaxy that Vareen lives." His courage brought smiles. Even tired soldiers found strength in his words. Lee looked at them, at faces full of belief. He knew what it meant now. They weren't just rebuilding a colony. They were building a message. A message the galaxy would hear loud and clear. The next morning, the humans started new projects. They built communication towers and energy shields. The Tharkan built gardens and greenhouses. Each day, the air grew cleaner. Blue clouds began to form again over the mountains. One morning, Vera called Lee to the hill above the valley. She pointed to the horizon. Tiny flowers were blooming through the dry soil, The first real green life in years, do you see? She said softly. Life never gives up. It just waits for someone to believe, Lee smiled. Then we'll keep believing. But before the moment could last, an alarm blared from the camp below. The humans ran to their posts. The scanners showed multiple incoming signals. Small ships approaching fast. Mara's voice came over the radio. Commander, it's not Union this time. It's Raiders again, twice as many as before. Lee's calm expression hardened. Everyone to defense stations. No one runs. No one hides. The attack came at dusk. The sky burned red with the setting suns as ships descended like falling stars. The Raiders had come back for revenge, and for the supplies the humans had brought. But this time the colony was ready. Turrets turned, shields rose, and fighters launched from the Hopebringer. Humans and Tharkan fought side by side, stronger than before. The Tharkan used the training humans had taught them. They fought not just to survive, but to protect their home. Commander Lee stood in the command post, giving orders calmly. Sector 3, hold the line. Don't let them break through. On the front line, Rollo fired from behind the barricade. His aim was steady, his eyes filled with courage. He remembered Lee's words. We stand together, or not at all. When one of the Raiders' ships crashed into the ground, the crowd cheered. The humans shouted, hold strong, and the Tharkan answered with their own chants of unity. The battle lasted through the night. By dawn, the ground was quiet again. The colony had won. The cost was heavy, damaged machines, tired soldiers, but no despair. They had done what no one thought possible. They had defended themselves. When the sun rose, Vera and Lee stood at the edge of the camp watching smoke drift over the hills. You have made warriors of us, Vera said quietly. Lee shook his head. No, Elder, you always had courage. You just needed someone to remind you. She smiled gently. And you, Commander, remind the galaxy what it means to care. A few days later, another message arrived from the Galactic Union. This time, it was not from an admiral, but from the Council itself. The message was short and cold. Cease all operations on Varine. Withdraw immediately. Further human involvement will be seen as an act of rebellion. The crew gathered in the command room as Lee read it aloud. The air was tense. Mara spoke first. If we leave, they'll die again. Diaz nodded. And if we stay, the Union might attack. Lee looked at them all. Then I guess we'll have to show the galaxy that helping others is not rebellion. He turned off the message and looked out the window at the shining fields of Varine. We stay. We finish what we started. The crew nodded. No one argued. They had chosen their side. Humanity's side. The side that stood for life. That night, under a sky full of stars, the humans and Tharkan celebrated their survival. Music played from both species and fires burned bright. There was laughter, dancing, and hope. The symbol "With You Always" was drawn on banners and walls. Rollo came to Lee and gave him a new piece of metalwork, a small badge carved with both human and Tharkan symbols. It means unity, he explained. For all who fight together. Lee took it with respect. Then we'll wear it proudly. As the night grew quiet, Lee walked alone to the edge of the camp. He looked up at the stars, knowing the Galactic Union was watching. He didn't feel fear. He felt purpose. He whispered softly, You left them to die. But we didn't, and we never will. Above the stars flickered, cold and distant. But on Varine, light burned bright, kept alive by human hearts and Tharkan courage. The galaxy might not understand yet, but it would soon learn that when humanity said, With you always, they meant every word. The days after the second raid were quiet, too quiet. The wind moved slowly across the rebuilt walls of the colony. Humans and Tharkan worked together, rebuilding their defenses and repairing machines. The camp had scars, burned metal, broken towers, and tired faces. But there was strength in those scars. Every person who walked through the camp carried the same fire. They would not give up. Commander Lee stood at the top of the command post, watching the horizon through his visor. The red dust of Varine rose gently, shining under the twin suns. For a moment it almost looked peaceful. Elder Vera joined him, her long robe fluttering in the wind. You look worried, she said softly. Lee gave a small nod. I am. The Galactic Union has been silent for too long. Silence means they are preparing something. Vera looked at the skies. Will they attack? Lee's voice was low but firm. Yes, and when they come, it won't be small ships this time. It will be an army. She placed her hand on his shoulder. Then we will stand. Like you taught us. Lee turned to her and smiled. No, Elder, you taught yourselves. We just reminded you how. Far above Vereen, hidden in orbit, a massive Union fleet gathered. Dozens of ships lined up in perfect formation, cold and shining like blades in the dark. Their mission was simple: remove the humans from Vereen and re-establish control. Inside the command ship, Admiral Calrin stood before his officers. Humanity has defied direct orders, he said coldly. They have armed an unregistered species. They have challenged the laws of the galaxy. End this before others follow their example. His ships began to descend. Back on the surface, alarms rang. The Hopebringer's sensors detected the approaching fleet. The humans in Tharkin stopped working and looked up at the sky. Bright dots appeared above the clouds like falling stars, but these stars carried weapons. Mara ran to the control center. Commander, it's them. Union ships in at least 30. Lee took a deep breath. So it begins. He pressed the comm switch. His voice went through every speaker across the colony. All units, this is Commander Lee. The Union is coming. They believe we will surrender. They believe we will break. But we stand together. We fight for life, for freedom, and for each other. Hold your positions. Humanity stands with Vereen. A roar rose from the camp. Human and Tharkin voices together. It was not the sound of fear. It was the sound of unity. The first wave hit within an hour. Union drones swarmed through the sky, firing bright blue bolts. The humans responded with defense turrets and pulse cannons. The Tharkin archers used plasma arrows from high towers, guided by human spotters. The air became a storm of light and sound. Commander Lee moved from station to station, shouting orders and encouragement. Keep the power lines steady. Don't let them cut the shields. At the west gate, Rollo and his team fought bravely. The Union soldiers landed with heavy armor. But the Tharkin had learned from the humans. They used smoke, quick strikes, and teamwork. Rollo shouted, "For Vereen! For hope!" And his group charged, driving the invaders back. Elder Vera moved among the wounded, helping where she could. She carried water, bandaged cuts, and spoke words of courage. "Stand tall," she told a frightened child. "The stars see your bravery." Inside the Hopebringer, Mara controlled the shield systems. Sparks flew from the panels as enemy fire struck the barrier. "Shields down to 40%. She shouted. Lee's voice came over the comm. "Do what you can, Mara. Every second counts." Then the ground shook violently. A massive explosion hit near the main generator. Lee ran outside to see what had happened. Smoke rose high into the air. A direct strike had damaged their power source. "Commander," Diaz yelled. "If the generator fails, the whole shield will collapse." Lee didn't hesitate. "I'll go." "Hold the line." The generator was buried deep under the colony, surrounded by machinery and heat. Lee entered the tunnel with 2 engineers. They crawled through broken metal and fire, trying to reach the control core. The air was thick with smoke. One of the engineers coughed. "Sir, if this goes, the whole base—" "I know," Lee said firmly. "That's why we're here." They worked fast, reconnecting cables and sealing broken pipes. Sweat covered their faces. The hum of the generator was weak but steady. Then, with one final spark, the lights turned green again. "Power restored," the engineer shouted through the radio. Above, cheers rose as the shield glowed back to life. The enemy fire bounced harmlessly away. Lee leaned against the wall, exhausted. "Good work," he whispered. "Now let's finish this." But the Union was not done. The Admiral ordered his final strike, a massive orbital beam aimed directly at the colony. The humans had no weapons strong enough to stop it. If the beam hit, everything they built would be gone. Mara's voice came through the radio. "Commander, they're charging the main cannon." "We have 2 minutes." Lee ran to the surface where the people of Vereen stood watching the sky. The clouds glowed red with the energy from above. He looked at Vera. "If that hits us, it's over." She met his eyes calmly. "Then let it find us standing." Those words gave him strength. Lee turned to his crew. "Prepare the Hopebringer for full power. Aim at the orbital cannon. We can't stop it, but maybe we can make them miss." Diaz looked shocked. "Sir, that will overload our systems." "I know," Lee said quietly. "But it's worth it." The Hopebringer lifted off, engines roaring. It rose through the clouds, glowing with blue light. The people on the ground watched as their human friends flew toward the enemy fleet. The ship looked small against the huge Union vessels, but it moved with determination. Inside, Lee sat in the command chair. All power to the main guns. Target their weapon core. Mara's hands moved fast. Target locked. Fire! A beam of white energy shot from the Hopebringer. It hit the Union cannon just as it fired. The two beams collided in the sky, a storm of light that lit the planet for miles. The shockwave hit both sides, shaking the ships and blinding sensors. The Hopebringer was thrown from its course, engines burning. Inside, alarms screamed. Damage on all decks, Diaz shouted. We're hit. Lee held the controls steady. Hold together. Just hold. On the ground, the Tharkan watched the explosion in silence. For a moment, they feared the Hopebringer was lost. But then, through the fading light, they saw the ship still there, damaged but alive. Elder Vera raised her arms. They live. The humans live. Cheers spread across the camp. The Union fleet, shocked by the failed strike, began to retreat. Their flagship sent one last message before jumping away. This is not over. Lee's voice came weakly through the comms. It's over for now. You're safe. Hours later, the Hopebringer returned to the surface, its hull scorched but still strong. The humans were greeted by cheers, songs, and tears. The Tharkan helped them down from the ramp, holding their hands and thanking them with every breath. Vera approached Lee, her eyes wet with emotion. You faced the might of the galaxy for us. Lee smiled tiredly. We faced it together, she nodded. Then remember this day, Commander. The day Vereen stood, and humanity stood with us. That night they built a great fire in the middle of the camp. Humans and Tharkan gathered around it, tired, bruised, but proud. The twin suns had set and the stars shone brightly above them. Rollo came forward carrying a flag. It was simple, half blue, half silver, with the words "With you always" written in both languages. He placed it in the ground beside the fire. This is our promise, he said, that no one will be forgotten again. Lee looked at the flag, then at the faces around him. The galaxy may not understand what happened here, he said, his voice strong despite the pain. But someday they will. Someday they'll know that when humans make a promise, we keep it. The crowd cheered and the night echoed with voices of hope. The people of Vereen were no longer victims. They were free. And beside them stood the humans, their friends, their protectors, their family. Far above, in the dark sky, the stars burned bright. The galaxy watched in silence. It had seen power before, power to destroy, power to rule, but now it saw something greater, the power to stand for others, and that power had a name. It was humanity. The morning after the battle for Vereen was calm. For the first time in years, the twin suns rose over a world that looked alive again. The air was clear. Flowers bloomed through cracked soil. The sound of children laughing filled the streets. And yet the memory of the Union's threat lingered, a quiet shadow over the victory. Commander Lee walked through the camp. Broken walls had been repaired. Human and Tharkan engineers worked side by side to rebuild turrets, fix water systems, and strengthen defenses. Every repaired machine, every garden planted, and every home rebuilt was a reminder of their determination. Elder Vera followed him, her long silver-blue robe flowing in the breeze. We have done so much, she said softly. And yet the galaxy still watches. Lee nodded. Yes, but it can't take away what we've built here. The courage, the unity, and the life. In the central plaza, the people of Vereen had gathered. Humans and Tharkan alike cleaned and repaired the area. Children ran through the streets carrying small tools and plants. Every face was alive with hope. Rollo ran up to Lee, holding a new symbol he had made. A small carving showing a human and a Tharkan hand together with the words, "With you always." Lee smiled. You've given us all a great gift, Rollo. A reminder of why we fight. Rollo's smile shone like the morning sun. We don't want to forget. Not ever. Meanwhile, far above Vereen, the Galactic Union watched in silence. They had sent ships to monitor the planet, expecting to find humans defeated or scared. Instead, they saw thriving gardens, repaired buildings, and a unified community. The Union had intended to enforce control, but what they saw was courage, skill, and compassion. A young officer spoke quietly to Admiral Calran. Sir, what do we do? Their defenses, their people, they've grown stronger than predicted. The Admiral's face was stern, but for the first time doubt crept into his voice. Perhaps we misjudged them. Back on Vereen, the humans and Tharkan continued their work. Mara and Diaz oversaw new water distribution systems, while human soldiers taught Tharkan techniques to repair and defend their technology. Everywhere Lee looked, the Tharkan were learning, improving, and smiling again. Elder Vera approached Lee. "Commander, you have given us more than life. You have given us pride." Lee shook his head. "No, you earned it. You never stopped caring for each other even when the galaxy did." Vera nodded. "Then let this day be remembered. Not as the day we were abandoned, but the day we were not forgotten." Weeks passed and Vareen transformed. Fields bloomed with new crops. Homes were repaired with the help of human designs. Schools reopened, teaching both human and Tharkan children the knowledge of two worlds. The colony was no longer weak. It had become strong, not just in weapons or walls, but in spirit. The humans and Tharkan worked together to build a new council. It included representatives from both species, ensuring that every voice mattered. Lee and Vera watched as their people discussed plans, argued about details, and laughed over shared memories. Lee smiled. "This is what it means to be alive," he said quietly. "To care, to fight, and to build together." Vera nodded. "We will never forget, and neither will the galaxy." One evening, Lee walked with Rollo toward the rebuilt hills surrounding the camp. The sky glowed pink and orange as the sun set. They could see the fields below, green, alive, and full of children playing. Rollo carried a small Tharkan flag, the same one he had planted during the battle. "Commander, I want everyone to know what this means," he said. "Even the stars, even the Union, we will not be left behind again." Lee placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll make sure they know. Humanity keeps its promises." Rollo looked up at the sky. "With you, always," Lee smiled. "Exactly. With you always." The Galactic Union, still observing from orbit, began to reconsider. No one could deny what had happened. Humans had faced their fleet, defeated raiders, rebuilt a dying world, and united an abandoned species. What the Union had called interference was in truth compassion, courage, and ingenuity. Admiral Calrin spoke quietly to his officers. Perhaps the galaxy could learn something from them. Back on Vareen, a ceremony was held. Humans and Tharkan gathered together to honor the survivors of the battle, the builders of the new world, and the defenders of hope. A monument was erected, simple, strong, and shining under the twin suns. On it were carved the words in both languages. When the galaxy turned away, humanity said, "With you always." Lee and Vera stood together as Rollo placed the flag beside the monument. Children surrounded them, carrying flowers and stones. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the quiet hum of pride. Vera turned to Lee. "This will be remembered forever." Lee nodded. "And when the stars see it, the galaxy will remember too." In the days that followed, humanity helped the Tharkan establish trade routes with nearby worlds, build schools, and create defenses against future attacks. The Tharkan learned to defend themselves without depending on outside help, but they never forgot who had stood beside them in their darkest hour. Commander Lee looked at the young Tharkan fighters, teaching them strategy. He saw their confidence, their courage, and their joy, and he knew that this was more than survival. It was growth. It was hope. It was life that would not be forgotten. Mara repaired a small water pump while Diaz supervised the construction of a defensive turret. The humans worked tirelessly, but they did not complain. They had learned a lesson that was simple and clear. When life is in danger, when hope is gone, you stand. You do not leave, and the Tharkan had learned it too. Months later, the colony was thriving. Green forests were returning. Schools taught human and Tharkan children together. Shops, workshops, and farms were active. The people of Vareen had regained what had been stolen by neglect and storms. Their home, their pride, and their future. The story of the human arrival spread to nearby systems. Traders, explorers, and even distant species heard about the courage and unity on Vareen. They learned that humanity had stood for the forgotten, risking everything not for power but for life itself. One quiet evening, Lee and Vera walked along the hills overlooking the valley. The stars began to appear above them. Vera smiled. "They will tell this story in the years to come. Your people, Commander, showed us the meaning of courage." Lee shook his head. "No, Elder, the story is about all of us. About humans and Tharkan standing together. About refusing to be forgotten." Vera looked at him, eyes shining. "Then it will always be true." With you always, Lee smiled, gazing at the stars. Yes, with you always. Below them, the colony glowed in the light of fires and lamps. Children laughed. Gardens thrived. Machines hummed with energy. Farine was alive, and somewhere far across the galaxy the Union would watch. They might not understand it yet. They might not approve. But the truth was written in every repaired home, every happy face, every standing fighter. The Tharkan had been left to die. The galaxy had turned its back, but humanity had come, and humanity had said with every act, every word, every heartbeat, with you always.